I think it was the actual administration that actually named humanitarian affairs and added poverty alleviation. I'm not sure that was during the Buhari. I think Buhari called it humanitarian disaster management. I'm not sure they call it poverty alleviation. So even the president thinks that we have to do a bit of poverty alleviation. But let's move along. Since we found at least Nelson is coming back. What about corruption, Reno? What's your take about corruption? Now, let me give my whole intro. I don't think that you can have a society with zero corruption. It doesn't happen anywhere. But I think the extent of corruption in Nigeria has become very corrosive. That everybody, top and down, in government, outside government, individuals, I think we need to have some kind of a national consensus and any consensus to say that look, we need to fight corruption. We need to reduce the level of corruption in our country. You are right. There's been a marginal improvement according to the transparency report, but we need to be much more radical about fighting corruption.
Nigeria is not as corrupt as even the Transparency International say it is. The reason why people think that Nigeria is corrupt is because of self-reporting. Nigerians, you see, when I read Margaret Mitchell's book, Gone with the Wind, where she said that black people like to spread bad news, I felt she was racist until I went back to Nigeria to work as a presidential spokesman and I saw the behavior of our people. Culturally, the black man...
It's tied to our socio-economic status.
Culturally, the black man feels happier when he's spreading bad news than good news. And we've got to change that.
Right. Don't agree with that, Ren. Don't let yourself agree with that.
But it's what I see. I tend to be a factual person. Now, in Nigeria, we're seeing that we improved a lot in corruption rating. And Nigeria is... I'll give an example. We're in New York. In this city that we are, we had a guy called Benny Madoff who stole $50 billion this was about 10 years ago.
Right.
It cannot happen in Nigeria. In this country that we're in, we had a president, Joe Biden, and his son that were proven to have been receiving kickbacks from Chinese and Ukrainian state factors. So in this country, we also had other issues, with officials that I don't want to name because some of them are in power.
Right.
Nigeria is not that bad. Under Margaret Thatcher, her son, Sir Mark Thatcher, was going around with his mother and collecting contracts from the Middle East. In France, Mitterrand's children were actually arrested for corruption. Look, it is a global problem. In Nigeria, we are dealing with it. And the only way that we can deal with it systematically is what Asiwaju is doing and what even my boss tried to do. And, he couldn't finish doing it. President Jonathan, we need to privatize as much of our country as possible so that the avenues for corruption are very limited. And then once we have a small government and we focus on regulation, then the avenues for corruption will be very little. Look, the NNPCL, is one of the places where, according to Transparency International, there's some corruption. Serious
corruption.
If we can completely privatize the NNPCL so that it's a private company, completely
without government,
without any government control, where the president does not even appoint.
What about the NLLG model, where government has 49% and then the private interest has 51%, and that way they get to manage it?
Well, even the NLG model, which is significantly better than the NNPCL model, there's still accusations of corruption there. So if you look at systems all over the world, where you have a private sector-led system, corruption drops significantly. So I'm going to give you a very good example now. In the United Kingdom, Margaret Thatcher said, she's going to sell everything sellable. So British Gas went, British Telecom went. A lot of people don't even realize that British Airways is owned by a Spanish conglomerate. The airports were all sold. And when that happened, corruption in the United Kingdom dropped significantly. But if you have a system whereby the government controls the railways, the government controls the oil and gas sector, the government controls the maritime sector, you're going to have avenues for corruption because you can't be paying somebody minimum wage of 70,000 naira and then the person 77,000 naira and then the person is sitting on contracts worth about $1 million, $30 million. There's going to be corruption. But when you privatize this, the private sector is not going to pay people 77,000 naira to do that job. The private sector is going to pay them, competitive salaries, and that is going to drive corruption. But until you do that, you got to realize that it's systems. It's systems. You have people who are ambassadors. They come to, in their country, they drive, they obey every traffic light. They come to Lagos, they start beating traffic lights. Why? It's because of the system. So if you address the system, you're going to address
I agree that there's quite a bit of our